Okay, well, welcome to Deadline Detroit. Thanks for agreeing to do this. We've got Bishop Lewis Evans of the Soul Harvest Ministries in Highland Park. And then we have Reverend W.J. Rideout, who has churches, a new Detroit church in the city of Detroit, and the All God's People Church in Roseville. So welcome. We're going to be talking today about the protests and what kind of impact it's having on society and where are they going with all this. So Reverend, we'll go to you first and say, what's the impact and what's the end game here? Where do you see it going?
Well, the point is that the millennials and the group of people that are protesting want to be heard and want to be assured that people are hearing them and understanding that they are tired of this 67 mentality, this 1967 mentality. This is the 21st century, and still we have the same kind of engagements. We have the same kind of racism and discrimination, and more importantly, even more importantly, Black people seeming like it's hunting season. They're shooting down unarmed Black men and Black women and people of color. So that's
And do you
the
feel
point
like that's
that
in Detroit?
why they're doing this.
Do you feel like, I guess Detroit is trying to say, oh, we're different or whatever. And obviously things have changed in the police department since 1967, but have they changed enough here in Detroit?
I want to say that I remember the case, since you brought that up. I remember the case of the late Malice Green here in Detroit.
Sure.
When there were a couple of racist cops.
Right.
I was on at the time. I happened to be in a uniform, and it hurted me badly to see
you were on
this
in the
young
department?
Black man. Well, I wasn't with Detroit Police Department. I was working with the sheriffs and things like that.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
I want you to know that even I got in trouble because when they brought the court case in, they wanted everybody to dismantle their flashlights because these white officers, beat him with a flashlight.
Right. Sure.
And all because he wouldn't open his hand.
Right.
And so that was a sign of the 60s. And so when I see stuff like what happened with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Trayvon Martin and Sandra Bland and Freddie Gray, just to name a few. When I see these kind of things, it brings back to memory what we have experienced before, and also what our forefathers and what the 60s have showed us.
Okay.
This is that day. So the people are trying to make a point.
Okay, and Bishop, what's your read on all this activism that's going on? I mean, do you think it's having an impact, and where do we go? Where do we end up going? Is this just something that goes every night till whenever, or what's sort of the end game here?
First, I want to thank you so very much for inviting and including me in this very worthy discussion. As I stated earlier, words of the late Dr. Martin Luther King stated, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And George Floyd, he's a symbol of a sacrificed lamb. We'll never forget him. He'll roll down in the histories of time as being one who brought together organizations, reformations, denominations, all sectors of life, Democrats, Republicans, concerning facing this very hateful thing that has ripped our country apart, and that's racism. Right here in Detroit, over 5,500 people died because of the coronavirus. And that was the first thing that alarmed our area to a great extent. I had friends, I had relatives, I had a sister in my parish. I've had comrades and compadres, folks who were of the cloth, who passed away behind that great epidemic. And so, and now we got this, the death of this young man who sacrificed himself, and stated in the word, and of course I'm a preacher of the word of God. It is stated when the Levite and also the priest went by and saw a man laying on the ground dead, they did nothing. Their question was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But when the Samaritan went by and saw this man, his question was, if I stop to help and do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? And so the question is, not that silent in a day and time like this, we cannot be silent because darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can drive out darkness. And it's the statement of the master who said that you are the light of the world. A city that sitteth upon a hill cannot be hid. So it's incumbent upon us, and I join the Reverend Rideout as he has made strides in the city over the last decade and score. And we've been friends for a long time. I stick with him because the ultimate measure of a man is not how he stands in the moment of comfort and in the moment of convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge in the times of controversy.
Right.
So I see the young men, the millennials, and some older persons who are protesting, and that's our first right to protest. There's nothing wrong with protesting, but I went further than that. They start rioting, and of course we do not stand with that. We're trying to subdue the rioting, but we encourage the protest. But the rioters is the language of the unheard, and we understand that. So I stand with you today, and I'm thankful for the platform to be able to be heard at this time.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, is there, where do you see it going? I guess there's some people who say, well, what's the ask here? What is it just kind of the constant raising of the consciousness? Or is there some goal where we say, okay, we want this to happen, we want that to happen, with specifics? I mean, we had a group of business leaders, including from, GM, all the the car companies and Blue Cross and everybody talking about how committed they are to fighting racism. But I'm not sure I heard a lot of specifics there. I know, people seem very sincere, but what is it that we do to move the needle to get to the next stage without us just ending up back where we've been all these many, many decades? What's Reverend? What's your read on that?
Alan, I want to tell you, first of all, I'm thankful for the words of Bishop Evans, and having spoken about the pandemic of coronavirus, not to go back there, but to stay on point.
Sure.
I look at this event, or these atrocities, I should say, that has happened to unarmed Black men and unarmed Black women and people of color as a pandemic, an ongoing pandemic, an ongoing epidemic, and it hasn't stopped. And so, in order for us to get headed in the right direction, protests have to keep going. People want to stop protests right now in the Supreme House, in the State House of Representatives. There are many want to stop the protests. There are many want to stop the organizing and the demonstrating and the rallying. But that's what we've got to do. We got to continue to mobilize, demonstrate, protest, and rally. But now for the cause, and to get us where? To get that needle where? To get that needle where it should be. Not on half full, but full.
Right.
Other words,
and how do we do that?
Have the whole model. Yeah.
What is full?
Full
what do you envision?
Full is when
change?
Exactly. What I was getting ready to say, full, when we get that needle on full, is when we get the laws changed, number one, in the Supreme Court. We get these Supreme Justices to change these laws, to tell all of them there, you got to stop allowing it to be hunting season, a license to kill for an officer with a badge and a gun, and for them not to be prosecuted or to be sued for their heinous behavior, for their police brutality, and that's headed in the right direction. Once we get somebody to police the police, then we're headed in the right direction. Once we get someone to judge the judges, then we're headed in the right direction. But when we give people free course to do what he or she wants to do, then they start using bias and prejudice, and that's what you see happening, Alan, all over the world. People are killing without a cause because of hate.
Before I go to the bishop for his answer. I mean, to me, I see, and we see it all the time, when one side can dehumanize the other side, it's easy to mistreat. It's easy to not treat that person with compassion. And how do we, and I'll ask the bishop this, how do we get to the point where the police don't dehumanize the citizens and the citizens don't dehumanize the police where they're, opponents? I mean, we see that in war where both sides dehumanize each other to the point where they can kill each other. We see that really, if you talk to a vegetarian, they say, we dehumanize an animal so that we can kill that animal. And so how do we get to that point where we get both sides to really, to evolve to a point where there's a mutual respect there?
Right. Thank you so much. I think it has started already. It's begun. I've seen police officers taking the knee. And that was quite amazing to me because that hadn't happened before.
Right.
I've seen police officers engaging in the protests, leading the protests, being a part of the process, supporting the protests. That had never happened before.
Right.
We do see a breakdown in some of the vicious thoughts and behaviors of the officers who are behind the badge, who thought that because they were authorities, they could do whatever they wanted, what they wanted, and how they wanted to do it. They're finding out it won't go. And the message of people is not only Black Lives Matter, but we've had enough, and enough is enough, and enough. And the Black man in this country, all of the atrocities that they've been through since day one coming over here in the United States, and their sweat equity helped to build the country by their own blood and effort. And they are saying now we want retribution. We didn't get the 40 acres in Mule. We didn't get a lot of the promise that us from the beginning of times. And even now, we've gone through Jim Crow, we've gone through the KK, and we're still in the KK, and a whole lot of things are happening even as we're speaking. People who are refusing to let go of their privileges, and they feel the right that they have, which is artificial. Black man is saying, ready to die. If it takes our blood, we're not going to have it anymore. We're ready to die, and this is how we're going. I think it's time. Yes, sir. I do think it's time.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No. I was going to say, well, I mean, it sounds like there's sort of various components. I mean, we're talking about legislative, but we're also talking about on the human side, stuff that you can't legislate, things where how do we get to the next stage where, like, as I say, each side doesn't dehumanize the other side, where there's a respect there. I mean, we've seen, obviously, I mean, it's mind-boggling, as a white person to see it. And I saw the dehumanizing. My parents are Holocaust survivors. And so, I see when one side dehumanizes the other side, they can do anything to them. And we've seen that with the police, and we saw that down in Georgia with the jogger. And it's just mind-boggling that an unarmed jogger could be running through, a suburb and get lynched.
His neighborhood.
And it's just mind-boggling that officer who is being videotaped, who's being witnessed, and he is basically murdering this person in front of all these people. What are some of these people doing when the video is not being run, when there are not witnesses? And so how do we, it's such a mess. Where do we take it constructively, where we can, beyond just words of, and I agree. I mean, it's been really heartening to see the officers who really feel for this and are doing the kneeling and hugging and stuff like that. But where do we go to the next stage? Where do we take it? Where do you see that?
Is that for me or the right Reverend?
Go ahead, Bishop, and then we'll go to the Reverend.
Good question. Good question. And this is a question that is being asked around the communities now. I think the mayor, Duggan, he had a press conference, I believe this morning, at the Reverend Wendell Anthony, various leaders in the city coming together and discussing policy. What is good to bring about a resolution to the problem that exists. And the Rideout is doing the same thing. He's calling colleagues together. He's called me a few weeks ago. We need to do something. We need to do something. And now we're here on this platform. And I think talking, negotiating, sitting at the table of bargaining and having ideas and concepts transferred over the table, we best can work together. And I saw even the mayor of Warren. Well, I was shocked to see the mayor of Warren with the people and helping with the march, engaging with the supporters of the march. That was shocking, but it's time to drop our pride. And there is nothing more tragic than to find an individual bogged down in the length of his life, void of his breath. And we're understanding that could be my brother, that could be my father, my uncle, ultimately that could be me. So it's time to talk about it. What are we going to do? And this is what we got to do. Make phone calls, bring about the leaders. I'm in Highland Park. We've already made some initiatives how we're going to move forward. And this is what has to be done in order for proper resolutions to be made.
Okay. Reverend, you want to weigh in on that one?
Well, one of the things, Alan, and thank God for Bishop Evans and his wonderful thoughts and his wonderful view and words. Everyone's heart has to beat the heart of God. That's the first thing. And in order to get things in the right standings on the right road, your heart has to beat the heart of God, meaning you have to love everybody. You have to be able to deal with everybody. This can't be a color issue. This can't be a race issue. So to get us in the right direction is to do as what Bishop said and what we've been doing for the longest. We that have been out here on the front lines, we've been trying to speak up and speak out against injustices. We've been trying to reach out to pastors, leaders, people of color. It doesn't matter what race or ethnicity. We tell them all, come on, let's stand together and let's meet. And so I'm glad that this dialogue and this thing came together, because now I'm getting called from all kinds of bishops and pastors and leaders. And I told them that I'm going to have some more meetings. Instead of doing what I used to do, I'm gonna have monthly meetings with all of them. And we will meet, and we will be a coalition of people that will tell the governor, this is what we're not gonna agree with. Tell the mayor, this is not what we're not gonna stand for. Tell the president, whoever. And I think that to get us in the right direction, we have to get everybody. It's all about souls to the polls. It's all about everybody getting out there voting, get the right governor, the right mayor, the right president, the right politician, senator, whoever, and then that's where it starts. And we continue to meet. We don't have block clubs anymore like we used to have, Alan. That's the problem. Nobody cares about what goes on in their community anymore.
Right. Well, let me ask you, it's interesting that you bring up the voting and stuff like that. I mean, some have accused President Trump of sort of really agitating and really, harming and pouring gasoline on the fire. And particularly the other day where he did the photo op in front of the church, which really upset the church people. And so how do we deal with it when we have a guy who's really more, and I'll be a little bit biased here and think a guy who's more concerned about his image, his ego, than he is really about healing. And how do you deal with that? What do you tell your parishioners? What do you tell people? Like, how do we deal with this? Bishop?
Well,
yes, sir. And it's quite unfortunate. The leader of the country is portraying a very, very bad, diluted image. And I think 3/4 of the nation, when they saw some of his heinous acts in the last week, were very disappointed with his leadership. You cannot fire on a crowd of protesters bullets, rubber bullets. You cannot throw pepper spray on them and water them down and open an area so you can go in front of a mosque, or was it a Catholic church, and also an Episcopalian church, and both leaders were very pointed and spoke against what his act. And that was one thing. And the president seemed not to be conscious. He has no touch with the community. Only person he's touching is himself. And it has been stated that this man is very, very arrogant. And it has been stated, not by myself, but by the media, in Fox News and others, that he only cares for himself. And this is leadership that he is leading the country, United States.
Right.
Very, very disappointing.
And Reverend, what's your read on the presidency and how? And then I'm going to ask you both. We're going to go one step further about this upcoming election. What's the message to the community?
I think that this president has been the most difficult sitting president in history. I think there's nobody like Trump. There's nobody like Trump. And what Trump does is shows you, me, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the liberals, the progressive, the white, the black, the right wing, the left wing, the right and the left. He shows everybody that he's in absolute power, that he's in absolute control. He has a lot of narcissism going on there. He has a lot of things going on there. But I pray for the president. I pray for him. My church pray for him, because the Bible says righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. And when the wicked rule, the righteous suffer. So
let me ask you this, just to go a step further with the election in 2016. There, particularly in the Black community, there was a pretty low turnout. I voted in Detroit. There was no waiting line. I remember actually afterwards I interviewed some woman and I said, can I ask you who you voted for? And she said, yeah, I voted for Hillary Clinton, but she said, quote, I didn't care for either one of their asses. And then later in the day, I was over in Southwest, over Western High School at about 5:30. And there, it's after work. There should be a 2-hour line for a presidential. There was no line. And I asked a Hispanic woman, I said, can I ask you who you voted for? She said, I voted for Hillary Clinton. And I said, did you vote for Hillary Clinton or did you vote against Trump? And she said, I voted against Trump. I thought the choice was between the flu and cancer. I voted for the flu. And so we got a sense that there was not a lot of enthusiasm, particularly in the city where the turnout was low. And look, Trump only won by 10,704 votes, which is really minuscule. Sure. Do you sense any difference in this election than in 2016? And, some people still say, the Democratic Party is taken for granted the Black population, that they've always just assumed they have the vote and haven't delivered enough. And at the same time, people say the Republicans haven't really delivered anything. And I don't know if that's fair or not, but those are some of the perceptions. Do you feel any difference than in 2016 among the congregation? Is there a different feel this time around, or is it basically the same? Bishop? Yeah, Bishop, do you sense any difference this time around, or is it?
I kind of watch the news and some of the reports that come across, the world reports, nation reports, and what have you. And the statistic poll shows that Mr. Biden is ahead. Mm-hmm. And I think people who were Republicans and are looking at the disposition of this president are changing parties. Oh. And it was stated that his allies and the Republicans are in conflict, decision making. Mm-hmm. Many people are upset behind his firing processes. Right. Many people are upset because he says one thing and he does another. Right. The coronavirus that came in, he said it would soon be gone. It's nothing to it. He asked people to take something that was not good for their health, drink it, he said. And he said a lot of things that were totally against the destruction. Right. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
No, okay. So Reverend, but I guess the question always is, from what I following the politics, is like it's not the Black community. It's not a question whether the majority are going to vote Republican or Democrat. It's, you know, overwhelmingly Democrat. The question becomes more how many people feel motivated to, you know, feel moved, and I think a lot of people, you know, all around the country, but particularly in the Black community, were not very moved by Hillary Clinton. And so this time around, is there, I'll ask the Reverend, do you sense any more of an urgency to get out there and express the vote, or is it you feel the same as it was in 2016?
Well, Alan, absolutely. It is moving now. People have a urgency to go to the polls now more than ever. They know that if they don't go to the polls, you're going to keep people in like the Attorney General William Barr. You're going to have people like Mitch McConnell in. You're going to have people like Trumps and Humps and Dumps and everything. They know that it's an urgency to go to the polls now because Black people need their rights. People of color need their rights. Immigration, a lot of thousands and hundreds of thousands of undocumented immigrants that I went to Washington to fight for. Those people know it's time to vote for somebody that's going to be concerned about them. Unarmed Black men and Black women who are killed, family members know, children know, people know it's time to get out and vote to change the policy, because we have a president who doesn't really know policy. He doesn't know foreign or domestic policy. And the way he tweets, you can see that my grandson, he's only 9 or 10. And I think that I just got to keep it real. He tweets a lot better than the president does. So it's time to go to the polls. Here's the lesson what I want to say about that. You either go to the polls and vote, do something, because your vote is your voice and your voice is your vote. You either go to the polls and vote or die. Take your pick.
Okay. Now I'll ask you guys one last question. How do you see all these protests? You see this as a good stepping stone? Do you see this as having a lasting impact on change, or do you see like at some point we're going to go back to what it was, or is there no turning back as a result of this?
Go ahead, Reverend.
I'll let Bishop answer first. I'll let Bishop answer first. Go ahead, Bishop. I'm going to honor him. He's Bishop.
All right. Thank you for that question. Very, very important question. Yes, I see the protest as being a monumental step in the right direction. People are demonstrating what they've had in them for years. And I think as this prolongs itself over the oncoming years, it will be better, because that's the right of the community, that's the right of individuals to protest and let your voice be heard. And nothing can stop that, and they're trying to stop it, but the First Amendment gives the liberty to those who would like to protest and let their voices be heard. It definitely made a big difference in the United States. It was a wake-up call to both whites and Blacks. It surprised me. I was shocked when I saw the numbers of people coming out, even in Troy where we're at. It was amazing. A peaceful protest, hardly no incidents at all. And people are trying to say to authorities and leaders, we can protest. We don't have to be riotous. We don't have to be gangsters. We can go out as citizens and protest and let our voices be heard. This is going to be ongoing.
Okay, excellent. And Reverend, your thoughts?
You know, absolutely. Protest is never going to stop. Rallying and demonstrating is never going to end. That's the only way. This is constitutional rights and amendments. So if people cannot do otherwise, what's the best way to get people attention? If you want to get billionaires and millionaires attention, you don't just stand in front of their house. You hit them where it hurts. It hurts them in the pocket. And so it is with politicians and leaders. You hit them at the polls. You go to the Capitol. You go to the state. We're going to continue to protest. I was out there protesting with them to help them, as I always do. But I found out one thing that's more important than anything now that you asked that question, Alan. We have more millennials protesting now than we've ever had in a long time. We have them at the age of 15, 14, in their 20s, in their 30s. And we have more millennials out there protesting than anyone. And they're doing that because they want to be heard. They want to know that the mayor, the governor, the president, the police department, or whoever is hearing their concerns. And when you tell this group, this is a different day. When you tell this group of millennials that you don't care, get lost, you're too young, you can't do this, wait till you get old, you're not old enough, they're going to show you that their visions and their dreams and their thoughts are equally as important as mine and yours. And so they've already told me, if you do not hear us, you're going to see us. And that's what you're seeing. That's what you're seeing in Detroit, New York, Philadelphia, Florida, Minneapolis, California, all over the world. And it's going to continue. It's not going to stop.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate
the new era.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a different time. Well, Bishop and Reverend, I really appreciate you taking the time out. I think it's really there's so many important issues to talk about, and it's great to have a dialogue, and hopefully we can do this again soon. So thanks again for joining. I appreciate it. So
thank you very much, sir.
Alan,
okay.
Alan, thank you for having me. Thank you for having Bishop.
Sure.
We can do this dialogue again.
We'll do it again.
Needed.
Sure, absolutely. Yep. I think it's good to get those thoughts out there and get people thinking. So.
But I want to say also congratulations to you, the media, because even some of the media was treated poorly and carelessly.
Absolutely.
So thank you for your.
Well, Michael was there Sunday night, and he was
there with me. We both.
Yeah, he got a little tear gas there, right? Exactly. So
he got a little tear gas. Guess what? Yeah. I got a whole lot of tear gas.
You got right. Yeah, it's tough, but it's important. It's important. We're all out there in different roles, making sure everyone's that we're observing, we're recording, and the protesters are out there making their voices heard. So it's great. So we'll do this again. I really appreciate it. Thanks very much. Everybody stay safe and healthy.